You're listening to If Only I Were Wiser podcast, where Raina Wilson brings together wisdom and raw life stories to provide encouragement and truth. So many times it's easy to become discouraged in your own pursuit of health because your story or circumstances look drastically different from your favorite influencer or even the expectations you had for yourself. If that is you, welcome! This space is for you to learn, breathe, and maybe just listen and see what wellness could look like for you. Hey friends, welcome back to the If Only I Were Wiser podcast. She's best known on Instagram as Purely Parsons, so today's guest is Elizabeth Parsons. Elizabeth is a follower of Christ, wife, and mother to 5. She worked in a pediatric nurse in the hospital setting for 9 years before coming home full-time in 2020. She is a voice in the health and wellness space and is passionate about empowering individuals to take charge of their own health and the health of their families. In this episode, Elizabeth shares her own story with what it has looked like for her family to step out of mainstream medicine and ways to support your family at home. You also get a little piece of our family navigating the same conversation in real time, so let's dive in. Well, hello, Elizabeth. Welcome to the If Only I Were Wiser podcast.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, I already told you I'm super excited this conversation. I was introduced to your platform quite a bit ago, and it has been a saving grace being a new mom and just, trying to navigate the world as a new mom.
It's a lot. It's a lot as a new mom.
Oh, for sure. So I would love just to hear about a little bit about your family. What does life look like on a regular basis? And at the end of that, what is one thing that is bringing you joy right now?
I love that question. So a little bit about me. I am Elizabeth Parsons. I am a former registered nurse. I'm still technically a registered nurse. I'm licensed as a registered nurse, but I came home in 2020 to be with my kiddos. So I have 5 kids, ages 2.5 to 9. And we homeschool. We have a little homestead in the Texas Hill Country. I've been married to my husband, Noah, it'll be 14 years. We just celebrated our 14-year anniversary. And that story in and of itself was just like a whirlwind. We met and were engaged within a month, and we got married within 7 months of meeting. And then we started having babies in 2013, and we went on this huge health journey with I feel like once you become a parent, that is a journey in and of itself, and you start to research things. But then also my husband had some health issues with autoimmunity, and so we kind of walked that road for many, many years. Praise the Lord, he is doing so well and barely has any flares now. And if you know autoimmune disease, you know that it is not linear and it can be kind of a roller coaster, but we've really had some good times in terms of his health recently. So I have 2.5-year-old twins, and they were born at home in 2020, and we did not know we were having twins. So a lot of people found me from that story. So I had surprise twins at home, which is not something that you hear about very often. It's not something that I would want to do again, but I'm very thankful that it is a part of my story. I pray that it has been a blessing and God has used that for his glory. And I think that he has, and I think that he will continue to. So that's a little bit about me. I love just kind of educating my audience on just being empowered to, question things and do your own research and not be a victim of the system.
Yeah. What is bringing you joy right now?
So many things. That is just, I feel like that question is so loaded. I would just say contentment, which is not like, I guess, not a typical answer, but I just feel like for a lot of my life, I was looking to the next season and thinking about, okay, well, once we get past this, it's going to be great. Or once we get this piece of land, it'll be great. Or once we can, whatever, XYZ, fill in the blank. We all have goals, and there's nothing wrong with goals. But I think as I've grown and aged, I guess, you just realize the preciousness and just the joy of the current season that you're in, and whether or not that's a season of hard or whatever it may be, just finding contentment in that. So I would just say contentment.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I love that. Super convicting though, too.
Right? For me too. I'm preaching to myself.
Oh, yeah. I definitely needed to hear that though. I would love to dive into just hearing more, whether it's your husband's story or kind of how your family started, or maybe your nursing background, how you kind of started to question, I would say big pharma, but, just like questioning beyond typical Western medicine and what that journey looked like starting out for you guys.
For sure. How long do you have? um,
Let's do it.
it is a journey because I feel like there was a lot of unlearning that had to occur. I went to nursing school and graduated in 2011 as a just very typical nurse. There was no speciality in my training. It was just a bachelor's degree in nursing, and I was just a happy little new nurse. And I got right into pediatrics and loved it. I worked in the hospital on a pulmonary unit. So I had a lot of experience with kiddos with cystic fibrosis. We had a lot of MS patients. We had a lot of late stage Duchenne's muscular dystrophy patients who were just basically bedridden on trachs and vents. And I just really had a heart for that population, especially cystic fibrosis. I grew really close to a lot of those patients, and it was a really special time. I'm from Alabama, and so that's where my nursing journey started. And so I was working in the hospital. We had gotten married and had been married for a few years. And then my husband, we actually, there was a series of events that led up to kind of his triggering of his autoimmune. So we ran, have you ever heard of the color run?
Hmm.
It's like
Yeah.
where they shoot the color
All the
at you.
colors at
Like,
you.
yeah.
Yeah.
We ran that in Birmingham in 2012, and it was like cold and rainy, and he just got this like really terrible respiratory illness and went to a doctor, and they prescribed him antibiotics. He went, I think it was 2 or 3 rounds of really harsh antibiotics coupled with a car accident. Like he was fine. It was just he got rear-ended, and it was fine, but it was a
Stressful.
stressful event.
Sure.
Yeah. So I think those two things, along with like our dietary, we weren't eating like clean, or like, we were, I guess, relatively healthy compared to the rest of the population. Like we went to the gym and we didn't eat terrible, but we definitely weren't paying attention to like the quality of the food or anything like that. So I think those things coupled together kind of like triggered this autoimmunity in him. Um, he got admitted to the hospital actually after he passed out one night, and it looked like he was having a seizure. It was this one of the
Oh my
scariest moments of my
gosh.
life, like outside some like choking events that I've had with my own children. Like that
Sure.
that would rank very high up there. And so um he got admitted to the hospital. Just it was just this like round and round and round and round, no answers, everything's fine, the labs look good, your EKG looks good, sleep study's fine. Like they couldn't find anything wrong with him, which is, I feel like, a lot of people's story. They feel like total, like they just feel awful, but the doctor's like, well, your labs looks good, and it's just like, okay, but I don't feel good. you know
Yeah.
and so finally he, through a bunch of research, I guess started figuring out that he may have some type of autoimmunity, like thyroid issues. And so he was getting some testing done, and the doctors, I guess his thyroid levels were off, and they just wanted to put him on medications. They were just like, here, just take this Synthroid and you'll be fine. And they just wanted him to be out. That was their answer, was lifelong medicine. And he said, no, thank you. And he found a different way. And that sounds really easy, but it was not. It was
Hmm.
probably a 7 or 8 year journey of
Yeah.
figuring out things that worked, and going through things that didn't, and spending a lot of money. He could barely hold our daughter when she was born, our firstborn. That's how sick and weak he was. And it was a trial for sure. It was a trial for him, obviously, just with his health, but also it was a trial for me and a lesson for me, because with autoimmune disease, the person doesn't really look sick. And so as ashamed as I am to say, like it's very hard to have compassion for somebody that doesn't really look sick, when you're like, you should be able to help me. Like I have a newborn, and But the Lord has really refined me even in that. And so yeah, it was a lot of just learning. And then at the same time, I had had my baby, and you just want to research everything that they're going to do to that baby. You want to research everything that they're going to put into that baby. You want to research every single decision that you're going to make. And so through that, I was just like figuring out so much and learning so much. And then you encounter, okay, here's her first ear infection. What are we going to do about that? I don't want to put her on antibiotics. What's the alternative? Let's try this. And so a lot of my journey was just trial and error when it comes to my kids. And I feel like your firstborns are always a little bit of the guinea pig.
Yeah.
And I definitely did things with my firstborn that I haven't done with my subsequent children, because you learn and you grow. And without growth, what is there? So I always tell parents, because I'll have people tell me like, I can't believe I did that. Like, now that I know what I know. And I'm just like, what were you supposed to do? You were just doing the best that you knew what to do. So here I am 10 years later. And we're just constantly learning. It's you never stop learning. And that's the beauty of life.
Yeah,
So
absolutely. Which is so interesting because I'll just share what you had shared about your husband is a little personal right now. So when this episode airs, hopefully we'll be farther along in this process. But our family's going through a mold crisis right now through the Army. And I left a PCM appointment, I think, on Thursday. And I was completely just discouraged. Like, I had a previous appointment with my doctor and had brought a whole list of symptoms from neuropathy to, thyroid triggers to skin, hair, nail issue, like all of the above. And we ran the lab work. And at that point, he was like, your labs are fine. Everything's fine. You're probably a stressed mom, because he read at that point, I was a year and a half postpartum. My son is 2. And he saw my labs and was like, well, you might err on the side of like postpartum anxiety and depression. So I can write you a prescription for Cymbalta and you can go to counseling. That was about 6 months ago.
we are failing postpartum women, like
Yes,
failing them.
just in general.
I What in the world? Like, I'm so sorry. But everything that you were describing, like hair issues, like extreme fatigue, the neuropathy, like he would get like his
Pins and
fingers would get
needles,
numb,
and yep,
pins and needles, cold, really cold. Yeah, Raynaud's like type symptoms. Yeah.
all of that.
Do you
And
have like GI involvement at all? Yeah.
yeah, so this
Yeah.
Thursday, I brought all of this previous symptoms that I had brought, 6 months ago. And at that point, 6 months ago, 2 weeks from that appointment, we had found the mold in our house. And so my husband and I have been living in that house since 2020. My son was there. I was pregnant there. Our family has been there. And this is our second remediation. And so at this point, we've been back in the house about 3 weeks, went back in for this appointment, brought up all the previous stuff. And this doctor, I saw a different provider, was like, yeah, so your previous PCM ran all the labs I would have run. Mold cannot get in your body. It can only create a immune or respiratory response, which could indicate why you're having, some congestion and sore throat. But beyond that, mold can't do anything else. Your neuropathy, your digestion. He did the hair test, tugged at my hair because I told him my hair was falling out. And he said some of those things could be stress-induced hallucinations. He's had previous patients that were convinced that the neuropathy from his chest to his feet
Gosh.
was something else going on, but he did write him a prescription for Cymbalta, and that's supposed to help neuropathy symptoms, so I can come back when some of those triggers get worse.
When they get worse. When you're feeling worse, come back so that we can.
Yes, which is the same thing with my son, which is just in this whole topic of conversation. It's super interesting, just like how the Lord timed this conversation. So I'm very thankful for that.
How did you find the mold?
The first time,
Yeah.
So the first time our floors were uneven, and we're in on-base housing.
Uh-huh.
The floors were uneven. I had been asking for several months to get somebody out to check it. And so finally, because a month before, the moisture team had come out and was like, there's no moisture. I was like, okay, whatever. The carpentry came out to even the floors. They pulled the floors up and it was completely black and rotten. At the end of that, they didn't really we had gone through a 3-week remediation. They didn't tell us what the source of it was. And so 2 weeks ago, when we got back into our home after just travel and my husband was training and on all the things, I like walked into my husband's closet with all of his uniforms, turned the corner, and not only was the sheetrock like not finished in the closet, but there was like active growth all over the walls.
Oh my word.
So at this point, they're doing a whole remediation process on our HVAC. That has apparently caused the leak. And here we are. The same question and just navigating the same process of how would you encourage families to, I guess, just start the process of healing, I think, emotionally from Western medicine, but also physically. Because like you said, it might be first starting with the expectation that it's going to take a little bit of time.
Yeah. I think that, gosh, I sympathize so much because I've been there, and
Mm-hmm.
I sympathize and I empathize. And it's just, I feel like people who haven't been burned yet don't get it. When
Yeah.
you say don't be a victim of the system, they're like, what are you talking about? They're just there to help you. Doctors are not the enemy, which I agree. I'm not saying that they are. I'm saying that there's a time and a place for them, but I'm saying that they don't know everything. And I'm saying that we live in 2023 where you can literally find anything that you want on the internet. And that's a good thing and also a bad thing. And you have to know how to kind of navigate it. So first I would say, outside of Western medicine, how to kind of begin to heal would be to stop going to the system that put you in the position that you're already in,
Yeah.
which I know that is easier said than done. I think for me, my passion is motherhood and
Mm-hmm.
showing moms that, like, if you're taking your child to the pediatrician is going to do pediatrician things. So if
Yeah.
you're going to, if you take your child to the pediatrician for an ear infection, they're going to give you an antibiotic unless they're a pediatrician who's done their recent research and knows that most ear infections self-resolve within a few days. Most are actually not even bacterial in nature, so antibiotics aren't going to do anything for that. So one round of antibiotics will wipe out that baby's gut 90%. And most of our immunity is found in our gut. So we are just like setting our kids up for failure. Not that if you've given your kids antibiotic, there's like no hope, but I'm just saying, like, but what if we knew differently? What if we didn't start the cycle of abuse? Because it's abuse. Because if you're not sick, they don't make any money. And well,
Mm.
they can, I guess, from other, wink wink preventative things. But yeah, they're not going to say get some more sunshine and take some vitamin C and get some rest. Like, those things are great and we know that they are healthy, but you're not going to hear that from your doctor. And I think that we saw that over the last 2.5 years with the pandemic, with them just pushing things that were actually harming people more than helping. So that would be my number one thing, would be stop being assaulted by the very system that has made you sicker in the first place and hasn't given you any answers.
Mm-hmm.
I think emotionally, honestly, just for us at least, I can only speak from personal experience and with what I know with my husband and myself, and um, really coming to terms with your trials and saying, I'm a believer. Like me, I'm speaking myself, I'm a believer. And so a lot of my contentment and my joy is found in that I know that the Lord is in control and he's sovereign over my life. And I fully trust that. Even when plans don't go the way that I want them to, and even when unexpected things happen and I have a sick husband, or we have a child with an issue, or whatever that might be, he's in control and he loves that
Mm-hmm.
child and he loves my husband more than I could ever love them. And even if, like, you're in the trial yourself, just bringing it to the Lord in prayer and finding contentment. Paul is an amazing example in scripture of someone who had a lot of trials, and he even speaks about his affliction in scripture,
Yeah.
but outside of whatever, we don't know specifically what physical affliction it was that he had, but he found joy in his contentment. He was content, and his joy was not found in his circumstances, and his circumstances were often unfavorable. And but yet he was content. And so I think just being at peace sometimes with even our uncomfortableness. We are a society who hates to be uncomfortable, and we are a society who hates to not know the answer. We really want to slap a diagnosis on everything, which is not a bad thing. I think that having a diagnosis for something is great, but I think that my husband was chasing that for so long that he missed a lot of, he took the long journey rather than just the straight and narrow. And it took a lot longer because he was so focused on getting that answer. You know, we want the answer. And sometimes there's not an answer. And sometimes you just have to take it day by day and use the knowledge that you've gained and pray for wisdom and strength to make it through another day.
Absolutely. And it's so interesting because that was actually one of the first encouragements I had from a friend when I had like walked out of that closet and I was like, oh Lord, just like the overwhelm, right? And I
I cannot
called
imagine.
her and was like, this is it. Like we've continued to feel sick. We haven't done well. We've lived in this for so long, and at this point, like we have to do something else about it. And I don't know what to do because we've been just doing our best.
Mm-hmm.
And her response was the same of like, Raina, even in the midst of all of this, you are feeding your family, you are doing the best to nourish yourselves, but the Lord's sovereignty still covers everything
Mm-hmm.
else. I was like, you're right. It's a hard pill to swallow, like you said, like it's walking the tension of desiring answers from the system that's supposed to care for us
Mm-hmm.
while also having the grace to like look back at this past appointment and know like at the end of the day the Lord is sovereign over my body, my husband, and my son. And he's going to bring healing in his time
Yep.
in whatever avenue. But that might mean stepping away from putting my hope in walking into my doctor's office versus like actually putting my hope in the Lord.
Yep.
And that's like a hard process to walk through, also.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. There's a lot of growth that happens in that, for sure. Yep.
Yes. I would love to just get started and hear like what would be outside of, like you said, kind of taking a step back and seeing what your healthcare system looks like. What is it doing for you? Where's your heart posture in that? What would be some of the first steps that you would encourage families to move towards, I think, more autonomy or ownership over their healthcare?
That's a great question. I think first and foremost is we have to define what true health is. Okay, so society's definition of health is not my definition of health. The Western model of health is not my definition of health. And so I think that's going to be a very personal thing. Some parents, they see health with a different lens than I do. And for me, health is founded in obviously spiritual health and having a solid foundation. But practically speaking, health is founded in nourishing your body well and treating the temple that your body is
Mm-hmm.
well, not feeding it inflammatory foods and not giving our children these red dyes and artificial sugars and processed crap. I'm sorry, it's crap. And the way that we feed our children just as a society is unacceptable, and we are setting them up for health problems. It's no
Mm.
coincidence that we have the sickest generation of children. I think the statistic now is like 49% of kids or something like that have chronic conditions, health conditions, and that is unacceptable. We should care. Like that should be like, whoa, not my kid. Like that will not happen to my kid, and we should
Yeah.
care enough to research the ingredients that we are using that we are putting in our children's body through injections, through food, through baby products, through topical application, every single avenue we should be researching. And I've always encouraged parents to become a researcher, because when you become a researcher, you are unstoppable. You know the why behind what you do, because you are not going to be normal. Okay, I'm not normal. People who do their research and who are educated, you're going to get pushback. I just had a friend actually who had a home birth, and this was her, I think it was her second, yeah, it was her fourth baby, but her second home birth. And I was walking into the church door and she was like, "Elizabeth, help me. I'm talking to my dad." She was like literally talking to her dad about home birth. And he was just like not for it. He was like,
Mm-hmm.
he didn't want any part of her having a home birth. His wife had had all of their babies in the hospital. And we were just like trying to convince him, sharing knowledge about home birth. And he was just like not having it. And that's what you're gonna like buck up
Mm.
against the system, and people are going to question you. I remember when I was pregnant with my third baby, I was using a midwifery practice, which is supposed to be like more naturally minded. And they were still giving me the runaround about drinking the glucola. And I'm like, I'm not doing it. Like, and she was like, "Well, you're going to have to find another provider
Mm.
because it's, hospital, yada, 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 yada." So, I made it work. I, they gave me the drink to take home, and I just drank some grape juice the morning that I was supposed to take the test, because I cared enough about not drinking what is in that glucola
Mm.
drink to not put that in my body. And then the next time I got pregnant, I had a home birth because I was done with the system. The only reason that I
Yeah.
submitted to having hospital births was because of insurance, which is a silly reason, but it was the state that we were in. We couldn't afford a home birth. And so by the time I got around to my fourth, I was like, we're doing whatever we have to do. We're saving the money so that I can have a home birth, because, of course, insurance isn't going to cover that, which is a story for another day.
Yeah.
Insurance, and oh my goodness, the birth industry is just whoo. So I don't even remember the original question. I'm so sorry. I got off on a tangent, but I would just say, like, defining health, and really truly being convicted about it. You have to care. You have to care enough to make these decisions, because it's not an easy road for sure.
Yeah. And I think you hit the nail on the head. Like, there's going to be a lot of noise. And
Yeah.
I've even just noticed that between friends, family,
Mhm.
because I think our family would quote unquote identify as crunchy, you know, just more holistically minded. Um, and there's a lot of noise,
Mhm.
and that's even before going to see my doctor this week and thinking, like, wait a minute, I've done my research. Like, I have friends that we're working with that's literally a holistic mold consultant. Like, I have a team of people that I could easily have in our corner. But I think I walked out of that appointment and I told my husband, like, I shouldn't have to argue or fight. It shouldn't be like this yucky feeling of me walking into my doctor's office. So, how would you encourage families against the noise, whether it's outside of the actual medical system and their friends and family, or
Mhm.
going in educated with their research?
Yeah. I think that's something that comes with maturity and growth and just time. I remember talking to my oldest brother about what we planned to not, like, some of the interventions that we did not plan on doing with one of our children. And
Yeah.
I remember I don't remember what he said exactly, but basically, like, why would you do that? Like, why would you, like, not do those? And that was like, that shook me at that time in my life, because I was a young mother and I was still very unsure. Um, and you just don't have a lot of experience. And um, with experience comes surety, and what's the word I'm looking for? Confidence, in the decisions that you're making. And now it is very easy for me to have a conversation with somebody who doesn't agree with me and be able to say,
Hmm.
you know what? We don't have to agree. I know that I do things a lot differently than most people, and that's okay. Like, that is okay. There is no judgment coming from me, but also we're good. Like, I don't need your opinion. I don't need your condemnation. I think that is honestly something that there's been a lot of like chatter on the internet world, about
Yeah.
just like the crunchy community being like super judgmental and holding people to higher standards than they hold to themselves. And I'm like, I don't want any part of that, because I'm just here to like encourage you and like be your cheerleader. And boo, if you want to like go naturally, I'm here to like, I'm here to help you. Like, I'm going to tell you what I
Right.
do, but I'm going to tell you also that, my neighbor probably uses sunscreen on her kids when they go to the beach in the spray form, and I'm not touching any part of that. And here's why. And
Yeah.
there's no judgment on this side, but I know why I do it, and I can back it up. That's the other thing, is like, when you can back it up and you have peace about the decisions that you make, and you are you have a relationship with the Lord, I think gives you a peace that surpasses understanding, that the world can't understand. I think that makes all the difference. So I would just say the overarching answer would be time, confidence in your decisions based off of experience, and learning and growth, and never be too proud, or never be too um, educated to have an open mind, and to be able to
Yeah.
listen to somebody else's opinion and say, okay, well, maybe I want to learn a little bit more about that, or maybe not, because, that's how I've learned everything I've ever learned, is listening to other people, or like reading something, or something sparks my interest, or my husband says something. And then, take it with a grain of salt, and eat the fish and spit the bones out. Use what you
Mm-hmm.
need to use, and just take it one day at a time. It can be so overwhelming if you look at the whole picture. Just take it one piece at a time. When we overhauled our life,
Yeah.
it wasn't really a choice. We had to change a lot of things quickly because of the deteriorating health of my husband,
Mm-hmm.
but not the majority of people don't have it that way, right? The majority of people don't have health crises where they have to do it that way. So just take it one thing at a time. As something in your home runs out, look at a way that you could maybe replace it with a better thing.
Yeah.
Or food is very easy. It's very easy. Like, the less ingredients the better. The more it's found in nature in that natural form, the better. With beauty products, we have such an overarching greenwashing, even in the natural beauty realm. They'll
Yeah.
say, there will be like only 3 ingredients, and then one of those ingredients is proprietary. And then you click on the proprietary blend, and it's like a list of like 20 chemical
Right.
ingredients, like
Yeah.
chemically based ingredients. And maybe, those don't rate super bad on whatever scale you're looking at, but it's still not natural. Like, how
Mm-hmm.
can you claim? So it can be so overwhelming. So just take it one thing at a time, and try not to be overwhelmed.
Yeah. I love that. And I love how you said like it's a level of maturity and I think capacity and
Hmm.
like how much you have space for, you know? So like
Yeah.
I definitely knew I was more educated or confident in like what my family was navigating at that time, but it also wasn't a place where I had discernment or peace to be like, hey, like, like this was not the time or place to address this, you know?
Yeah, and maybe that is the answer. Maybe in some instances you don't know, but you just feel a conviction about it, and you don't
Right.
have to fight. You can always just say, "Okay, like, that's
Hmm.
fine." Like, why do you have to defend I always say, like, I'm not responsible for like the way that my choices make you feel. Like,
Mm,
that's not my responsibility. My responsibility is to care for the people that I've been entrusted to be a wife to my husband, and to be a good mother to my children. And at the end of the day, those are my responsibilities. So,
absolutely. What is one thing I think that kind of threw you off, or you've had to really dig in your heels and find discernment with the Lord in navigating this like process of stepping away that kind of just threw you off? Like you weren't prepared to kind of hit this wall in this process
In the process of what?
of stepping away from Western medicine and like
Oh,
being educated in your own decisions?
um, I think for me, at least, it was a lot of unlearning. And I was not raised naturally. My mama, bless her heart, she was a single mom to 3 kids, and she did amazing. But we were not raised naturally with a natural mindset. And so then I went to nursing school, and obviously that's just like more of just Western, Western, Western. And so I think something that wasn't really, I didn't really expect to kind of experience was um, the instances where I would be like, well, I don't know. How do I want to word this? I still felt myself wanting to have that urge to go to the Western medicine for the answers,
Yeah.
or for the checkup. For what? Like, what are they checking that, you know? Um,
Mm-hmm.
and so I think just that kind of surprised me. And I would say there was a little bit of like hesitancy from me at first, when we were kind of moving the direction of more holistic care, to still have that urge to like want to be a part of the system, but also still kind of like going the other way, but like also still wanting to have that kind of like security. It's almost like a security blanket. And so there was just so much unlearning. And I think it took me seeing just the fruit of the way that we live now, and just how healthy, praise the Lord. I don't take my children's health for granted. I don't take credit for my children's
Right.
health, but just to see how healthy our children are, and to see how, like, how they compare to the majority of society right now. And it's a blessing, and I'm so thankful for it. But I also think that the Lord has given us wisdom, and he's given us common sense, and we need to use that. We need to use the intuition that we were given. And so now, it's a lot less of that. Obviously, it's a lot easier now. But I still even find just like, I guess it's fear. Like at the at
Yeah.
the at the root of it, like I'm thinking about what is that? Like why is it so hard to kind of like detach yourself from the system? And I think it's fear, whether that's fear of like something serious happening, or just like of other people's opinions, or I don't know, but I think fear probably comes into play there. And we know fear is a liar, and it's a tool of the enemy. And so just to say no.
I think you're right. Like it comes down to it's never this feeling when I like consider an alternative option. It's not this place of like, oh, well, I have this option, or it's this place of fear. Like it is coming back to that doubt. And it's not the confidence, it's not the peace, it's not the discernment, it's
Yeah.
not the wisdom, any of the things that the Lord had given me to move forward in that decision. It was,
Yeah.
oh my gosh, my son just turned 2 and we haven't taken him to the doctor in a year. So I probably, like I should probably take him back to the doctor, you know?
Yeah.
And that I did. I like fell
Exactly.
into it. We went
Yeah.
to the doctor. And like, again, a lot of it right now is like, we have to build this paper trail in terms of like the army.
No, and that's what I was going to say, is a lot of people do, want that paper trail, or, not
Hmm.
everybody has a medical background. Not everybody can listen to their child's heart with the stethoscope and be able to say like, that doesn't sound necessarily right,
Yeah.
or whatever. Like, I understand that. And so it's totally reasonable to want to take your kid to the doctor every year if that's what you want to do. I think every 3 months when they're a baby is a little excessive, unless you're, um,
Hmm.
but that's totally fine. But there's ways that we can do that. Maybe not, I guess, the military is very hard. I have a dear friend. I have a dear friend who's in the military, and I know you don't get a lot of choices. But for the regular person who's not necessarily bound by military guidelines and you have to go here, you have choices. You can, whether that's finding a family doctor, those are usually a lot more naturally minded. You don't have to go to a pediatrician just because it's a kid, like you can find a family doctor that's in your network, or
Mm-hmm.
find a local Facebook group in your area of crunchy moms and ask for recommendations for a pediatrician in your network who's more naturally minded.
Right.
That's what I did when I was still taking my kids to a pediatrician, and they didn't push anything. It was great.
Yeah. And that's what I had planned for our next move is, you know, we have options. We don't have
Yeah.
a lot of options, but if it means like my husband and I have already had the conversation of saving up, like you said, for our next baby, that I don't want to be in the hospital for 4 days. I don't want to go through a C-section. And I had a nurse that came to me and was like, I think she lied to you to like keep you to be induced. I was just like, we're not doing that again. But I think you're exactly right. I think ultimately it comes from this place of fear. And at the end of the day, like each family has the confidence and the knowledge to make the decisions for themselves. And it might just be an aspect of doing a little bit more
Yeah.
research, and being open to whatever your capacity is in your season, where you're at financially, mentally, spiritually, and moving forward from there.
Yeah, for sure.
So as we kind of dive into some of the kids, or like as you were building like your home, your homestead, and like your, cabinet essentials, I would
Mm.
love to know just what were some of those first things that really excited you to learn about, and were some of the first things that you implemented for your family?
As far as like carrying
Making swaps.
okay, like in the medicine cabinet specifically, or okay.
Yes.
um I think one of the first things that I learned about was elderberry syrup, because I was a nurse and I was working in the hospital, and they want you to get the flu shot every year, and I would always decline it. And so I was always the nurse with the mask on the unit. I had to wear the mask for like my entire 12-hour shift. And then I learned about elderberry syrup, and that's what we started doing in the colder months when we weren't getting as much sunshine, and just sickness is more prevalent. And I noticed it made a really big difference in my kiddos and their health. And so that became kind of a staple in our medicine cabinet, was always having elderberries on hand so that I could make some fresh syrup, because it's so much cheaper to make it yourself.
Mm,
And so that was the first thing I would say, um, was a huge game changer for me, and just kind of like my gateway into like natural remedies.
okay.
Um, Another thing is not necessarily a supplement or a tincture, but it's a book.
Okay.
Be Your Child's Pediatrician. I think it's Rachel Weaver is the she's not a doctor, she's a midwife, I'm pretty sure. Don't quote me on that, but the name of the
No.
book is Be Your Child's Pediatrician, and it is just like a reference guide basically by ailment. It's something that I
Mm,
really want to do myself, to write myself,
yeah.
kind of like put all of my Instagram posts into a book, or a course or something. But that
Yeah.
book is really great. She literally takes every single ailment you could ever think of, chicken pox or like anything, and tells you natural remedies for it. And so I think the biggest thing in parenting is to be able to be prepared so that you know what to do in those instances. So, and a lot of times with natural remedies, you want to treat things sooner rather than later so that they don't kind of escalate. Um, so like with I keep going back to ear infections.
Yeah.
But with ear infections, it's better to start the treatment sooner, and it's not going to hurt because it's not like you're giving antibiotics. So,
Hmm.
some garlic mullein oil in the ear and some, lavender and tea tree oil rubbed on the outside of the ear. Like, what's that going to hurt? It's not. And so just kind of having that reference guide is really, really helpful. Um, and then I would say this is a little controversial in today's world, but we use essential oils, and they are honestly a huge part of my natural medicine cabinet.
Yeah.
I treat a lot of things with essential oils. So that was another thing that I started not until like my second daughter was born. Somebody gave me clary sage to try and induce contractions because I am blessed with like the most comfortable uterus ever, and my
Mm,
babies
yeah.
love to stay longer than I would love them to stay. So
Yes.
that was like the first ever essential oil. And then when one of my daughters had a cold, I used like a respiratory blend, and the change, like the way that,
Really?
yes, just it was so quick. The way that it relieved her symptoms, and just kind of eased her breathing. I was like, whoa, like these are pretty cool. So I know essential oils are, there's some people hate them, and I'm like, that's fine. I
Yeah.
use them and I love them, and they're a huge part of our medicine cabinet. So
Yeah. No, I love that. I definitely have some listener questions to wrap up with, which I think this is a perfect segue because one of the things that I think is common in the kids' medicine question is just like immune support.
yeah.
So it may be elderberry, but are there any other things that off the top of your head you're thinking, oh yeah, this is a definite must for, cold and flu season for my
Mhm.
kids and I don't want to go I don't want to go to the doctor.
Yeah, for sure. I do. I give my kids I call it a wellness shot,
Mhm.
like once a week throughout the year. And then when it's cold and flu season, basically we're not getting sunshine and we're eating a bunch of sugar is really what it is.
Yeah.
I will do it maybe like twice a week. So it's elderberry syrup. I make my own elderberry syrup, so it's like more of a juice consistency, less of a syrupy consistency. So that's kind of the base of
Syrup.
it that gives it like the liquid. So it's elderberry syrup. I do cod liver oil, which is a great source of a lot of things, and it's very, very, very rich in so many things that we are lacking in just like our diets and lives today. So I think I take cod liver oil as well. Zinc, liquid zinc, and I have a liquid vitamin C that I really, really love, that's like acerola powder based. So
Yeah.
it's like a whole food zinc or a whole food vitamin C. So what did I say? Elderberry syrup, cod liver oil, vitamin C, and zinc. That's like the core. Sometimes I'll add other random
Okay.
things as I feel like they need it, but I would say that's like the core wellness shot,
Yeah.
immune boosting things that I do.
Okay. Definitely better than the ones you find at Walmart, right? In the little bottles.
Yes, stop taking emergency. Stop taking the prepackaged stuff that's basically just like sugar and chemicals. It's not helping you.
Yeah.
And then also, a huge part of immunity is our diet.
Mhm.
So, if you're eating terrible foods, you're going to feel terrible, and your body is going to feed off of those sugars and those, um, you know, our body gives us what we give it. And so we really have to be nourishing our bodies well and making smart decisions about food, and realizing that diet plays a huge part in health.
Oh,
So
for
we can't be
sure.
naive about that.
Another one, like I said, we would have to probably do a whole nother episode for pregnancy, postpartum, but I
Yeah.
have to ask
Yeah.
it because it's a dear friend of mine. Um, Ultrasounds during pregnancy. I've seen so many things, So what would be the benefit to not doing them?
You're I'm sorry. I'm just thinking like people who know my story, because I didn't get ultrasounds when I had the twins.
Mhm.
And so you're asking me what would be the benefit of not having them. I'm telling you the benefit of having them would be knowing that you're having twins. So anyway,
You have two
um,
babies, yeah.
the benefit of not having ultrasounds would be, I would say, I just like to err on the side of caution, because we don't truly know whether or not they affect the baby in a negative way. I do know what I see on the monitor in my history of having ultrasounds is that babies move away from it, and it is
Interesting.
a baby is in a sack full of water. Ultrasound waves heat that water. So what are we doing when we're heating that water? They don't want us to sauna while we're pregnant, but it's okay to like heat the water that's
Right.
literally right around the baby.
Yeah.
So we just don't know. And I'm not opposed to ultrasounds. Like if we were to ever have another baby, I would be getting one ultrasound as I did with my other pregnancies, just to verify that there's
How
not
many
two.
babies we're cooking?
Yes. The only reason I didn't get an ultrasound with the twins was because it was COVID, and I did not want to take 3 children to the hospital and have to like mask them up, or I don't even know if you could have taken them. I probably would have had to get a
Yeah.
sitter, which I
Yep.
didn't know anybody to watch my kids where we were. And so I just didn't want to deal with it. We did get an ultrasound the day before I went into labor with the twins, and they still only saw one.
No
So
way.
they're also not accurate. The benefit to not getting them would be less stress, because oftentimes they will see things on ultrasounds that, they're just clinicians. They're trained to do what they're trained to do, and they want to see specific things. But that
Mm-hmm.
can be very stressful for the mother if they're like trying to find something on the heart, and they're like, "Oh, we don't see this or we don't see that. We need you to come back for like a repeat ultrasound." Then you're stressed for like the 2 weeks that you're like waiting, or like they'll tell you, "Oh, you have placenta previa." But usually it self corrects. So we'll monitor it and we'll recheck you in like 10 weeks. And you're like,
Yep.
okay. And then you're just
Great.
stressed out, where if you wouldn't have gotten the ultrasound, you wouldn't have even known. And I'm not
Mm-hmm.
saying that ultrasounds don't catch things that are important. But for me, I would just prefer to have less. The less is better,
Yeah.
in my opinion, just because less stress. We really don't know what what effect that is having on the baby.
Mm-hmm. Oh, for sure. And I definitely had those personal experiences going through my pregnancy, but I also had friends that almost gave these mamas miscarriage scares because they were like, "Wait a minute, I don't hear a heartbeat." And I've had friends that were like, "That was the longest 30 seconds of my life," waiting
Yeah.
for them to be like, "Oh wait, just kidding, here it is."
Just kidding. Like, your baby's
Ugh.
alive. Just
Yeah.
kidding. Like, okay.
Goodness.
Appreciate that. Wow. Yeah.
To finish this conversation, you said it at the beginning, and it's good just to reiterate, like, there's no shame, there's no
Mm-mm.
condemnation for the decisions that we've made as parents and navigating healthcare. It's messy, it's loud. We've touched on all of those things. And also, like, you're going to do what you need to do in your situation, and your discernment and your decisions for your family can be drastically different from somebody else's. And that's also okay.
Yes. 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 Say it again, sister.
Yeah. So, Elizabeth, I would love to just share where our community can connect with you, resources, all the things.
Yes. So I am mainly on Instagram at Purely Parsons, all one word, no periods, no hyphens or whatever. It's just one word, Purely Parsons. That is where you will mainly find me. I have tons of saved highlights. My natural remedies highlight is where I keep like all of my posts that I've done. So if you're looking for anything specific, I would check there first. I also have a website, purelyparsons.com, where I've created some good resources there. I have a whole tab on vaccines. Can I say that word? I don't know.
I know, right?
Okay.
It's fine.
I have lots of resources linked on my website, a few different pages, and a little bit about my faith on there as well. And then we also have a small shop where we have some wellness products. I do sell like elderberry kits if you want to make elderberry syrup at home, but we recently expanded our line. So now we have like 8 products of just like wellness things, natural fragrances and detox baths and serums and lots of good stuff. So yeah.
Totally. I'll link all of that. And before we wrap up, I have one final question that we close with all of our guests. And I'm really curious to how you will answer. But if you could provide any wisdom to your younger self
Mm,
or for our community that is listening, what would you share?
that's a good question. That's probably one of the best closing questions I've ever had. If I could provide any wisdom to my younger self, I think that it would be um, that you're doing a good job, and the world is going to question you at every step in your journey, but you know your child best. You know the decisions that you're making and why, and you're doing a good job. So just stand firm and don't be pushed and pulled by the waves. And just keep trucking, keep researching, never stop learning. That's more than one thing. I'm sorry. So
No, that was perfect. This conversation was definitely one, like I said, I think the Holy Spirit lined it up perfectly because that was something I definitely needed to hear from my own heart this week.
oh,
But I know it will definitely be a blessing to our listeners as
I hope
well.
so.
So thank you so much for your time and your wisdom.
Of course. Of course.
Such a much needed encouragement. So thank you so much, Elizabeth, and we will catch you guys on the next episode. Thank you for listening, friend. I hope you enjoyed the episode. If you don't want to miss any wisdom or encouragement, be sure to subscribe to the show. And don't forget to rate and review. Your feedback means so much and helps our community grow. If you're looking for more wellness wisdom and free resources, head over to livingwiselywell.com or get connected with me on Instagram at wiselywell. And if you're looking for a break from the hurried health lifestyle, check out my Return to Rest resource for tangible ways to slow down and finally find rest.